All right, we're live. Welcome to the Expo live stream. We got Simon Grimm on here from Galaxy.dev, and we're talking about your React Native tech stack in 2025. How's it going, Simon?
Yay. It's great. I'm so excited to be here. Honestly, I was looking forward to the stream the whole day because I really like streams. I just hate setting them up, so I haven't done them lately. So I'm
I hate
glad
how
you
to set
took
up too, yeah. I just like talking on them, so I'm glad other people set it up for me. And I also don't like recording live. Like I don't like doing pre-recorded stuff because then I second guess it. Like I'm not good like you or Beto or other folks. So I need like the one take, and you don't get to take it back. So streams are perfect for me. And also talking to people. It's so fun to talk to cool people who are doing just really cool things in the React Native community, illuminating new pathways for folks to make apps. So it's a lot of fun to do that.
Standing on the shoulders of giants as we dive into a lot of the packages today. I can already say like all these people who've done all these packages are so like unbelievable smart. I'm happy they all exist.
Yes, indeed. So we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. We're going to let people roll into their various areas where they're streaming this from. We did have one question that we'd love you guys to answer in the chat as we get started. And I was curious about everyone's developer-oriented New Year's resolution. So if you got like an exercise thing going on this year, that's great. I don't need to hear about it, but I'm curious about what do you want to learn this year in coding, or what do you want to build? Do you have anything on your list, Simon?
Actually, yeah. I want to build a lot of real apps. So over the last years, I've been doing a lot of teaching, of course. You know, that's what I do with YouTube and Galaxies. And there hasn't been a lot of time in between, like all the content stuff, to like build my own apps. And honestly, I just want to have that thrill again. I just want to get back into the habit of building. And I kind of started this early. I honestly, I like to have like this kickstart into the new year. So my resolution usually starts in December. And so I already released one app in December and now one early in January. And it's great. It's an amazing feeling to ship an app, honestly. Still, after like 10 years of doing mobile dev, I just love it when I get the email, your app is live on the store. It always feels great.
You know, I still 7 years after getting started in React Native, or like an app development in general, like every time I open an app that I built and I see it go from splash screen to actual content, I'm always just like a little bit like amazed and surprised. I'm like, did that actually work? Did I do that?
Yeah, I told this in other places. There's something special about mobile apps. It's different to releasing a website. I don't know why.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot of the same things in terms of my New Year's coding resolution. I didn't do nearly as much teaching content as you, but I did a lot of workshops last year. I think about 10 months, I did about 6 different workshops. So I did a lot of like building like demo apps and teaching people exactly how to build things, especially with Expo Router. And I'd like to specifically, like, I would like to build something new in general, but specifically, I keep thinking about gaming. It's an area that's like, there's different edges to it in React Native. Like there's, things where you can use, Skia or just the default view components for like puzzly type things. You can go full 3D. I'm probably more 2D, but like, there's like not obvious ways to go. And I feel like building a game just twists your mind in different directions. And so I'm really looking forward to exploring that more and maybe even teaching a little bit about it.
Gaming is on my list as well. You should listen to the latest episode of my podcast with Ben Awad. He has built the White Pet game.
Right. I didn't get that one yet. Yeah, I should do that.
He was he was an amazing guest. And he kind of motivated like everyone to build a native app, I guess, with React Native, a game.
Yeah, I love when he explains like his tech stack too, which was kind of salient today because you'll be like, well, how did Ben do this like wizardry? And he'll be like, yeah, that was like, Expo and async storage or something like that.
That's a good reality check. We're all like, oh, I use Drizzle and I use the latest XYZ stuff. And then you talk to someone who actually has a successful game. And he's like, yeah, I use style sheet. I use async storage. It works. It's a good reality check.
Yeah. All right, it's about 4 after the hour. So we got some folks rolling in and we're going to get started here with the Expo live stream. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We've got Simon Grimm from Galaxy.dev, and we're here to talk about your React Native tech stack in 2025. And Simon we'll have a video going live describing his tech stack in more in depth on his channel on YouTube. So we definitely encourage everyone to watch that after this. Maybe get a little bit of work done during the day, so you're not just watching videos all day. But but yeah, we're gonna give you a little sneak peek here, talking about what tools you should be using to build your apps. So Simon, yeah, how's it going?
It's going great. Are you already sharing my screen? I was just looking.
We got it shared. I don't have it on stage yet, so I can put it on stage anytime. Actually, that's a good point, because we're going to be talking. You got your 0 to Hero React Native mission.
Right.
Figure out you introduce your stuff and your new content you got there.
Right, that brought us together in the first place, I guess. So earlier this year, right on January 1st, I launched a new mission on Galaxy.dev. So for everyone who's been a member or joined Galaxies before, there are a lot of courses about a lot of React Native topics, usually related to Expo in Galaxies. But I wanted to have something that is like really that's why the title, from 0 to hero. So we built up this complete new experience, which we called a mission, which was kind of fitting to our space theme. And so far, there are like 5 modules included, starting from the fundamentals to like data storage, UI topics, security. Even this week, I just released something about native modules, push notifications, and in-app purchases, really. I tried to like put all the essentials into this course. And from this course, I basically also got the idea for the streams, because there are so many technologies you can potentially use. And we wanted today dive into, I think, about 5 or 6 categories, like state management, UI, core technologies, tools and services you can or should use. And I think Keith has some opinions about them, as he said before. So I'd love to.
Mostly complimentary.
Them, yeah.
Maybe some objectionable. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, but for everyone who's getting started with React Native or wants to ship an app this year, check out Galaxies.dev, the new mission about React Native. This course is really... it's currently at 10 hours, so it's going to be a bit below 15 hours when it comes out. At the end of this stream, I'm going to demo what I built today for the last module. I think this is going to be exciting as well. But let's probably start with some basics.
Yeah, I wanted to throw in there real quick, folks, if you have questions, pop them into the chat. As each of these topics come up, we'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can get to as we talk about your React Native stack in 2025.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about some core things first. If you're starting a React Native app in 2025, you should use Expo. And I'm not saying this because we're on the Expo YouTube channel or in an Expo stream. It is recommended. It is the recommended framework in the React Native documentation. So for everyone coming here, all the questions: is the CLI better? Is it different? Like, Keith, can you say something about this? I've done it so many times.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people overthink that first step. Like, oh, well, it's the React Native. Like, this is why we have the whole definition of a framework now, is because the community got together and we wanted to give folks clear directions on how to get started, not because this technology or that technology. It's not like a technological turf war, but it's like the community was like, we are all working together. We're all building native modules. We got folks working on core components. We've got folks working on different key native modules and capabilities and things like that. And so fundamentally, both CLIs run your JavaScript bundle and you stream it to a phone. And so we need to recommend one. So you're not missing anything if you use the Expo CLI. Really, you're getting the same capability to bundle and run it on your phone, and you're also getting access to do it with a development build. So you only need to build your app, once, as long as your native dependencies stay the same. You're getting quick commands to go build it natively with your local hardware if you need to. You're getting an export command for web for your universal apps. You're getting the pre-build commands, so you can, not have to deal with native projects or deal with native projects temporarily if you need to do a little bit of debugging in Xcode or Android Studio. So it gives you everything you need, and you're not missing anything, and it's very easy to use. And now, especially the documentation that you're going to read or the content you're going to see, as you look at videos on how to do things from folks like Simon, they're going to show you using the Expo CLI, and you're going to see that it's going to do everything you need. So.
Yeah,
use
I think
it.
yeah, I think this is the biggest fear people usually have, that they're missing out on something. So if they choose Expo, they might like not be able to do XYZ later down the line. That's usually what I see. Like, what if at some point I want to use? Yeah, you can do this. So there's really no question about. You said it, native modules, pre-built. I think there's a lot of like confusion as well around pre-build. I don't know. Do I still have the video? Yeah. I did a video a while ago, like every way to build your React Native. I think it's like one of my most popular videos. Where just like people are used to this Expo Go sandbox environment, which you can like instantly bring up, and that's cool for people getting started. But by now, Expo pre-build to me is like the default. Honestly, like every project, I'm just getting started with a pre-build because it feels better to me. It feels like this is my app, honestly. So I see no problem with pre-builds at this point. Yeah, on Windows, you can't do a pre-build for Mac, as far as I know. So you would probably have to use EAS for that. But anyway, you couldn't build Mac apps on Windows anyway. So
right. And using the CNG workflow does mean actually you can do a lot of development on Windows because you don't have to worry about building for
right.
Xcode, which isn't even there. In fact, I do a lot of my hobby development. Like after work, I put away my Mac and I open up Windows just to do something different. B, I actually kind of like the development environment sometimes, and I don't really have to do anything else. I just do EAS build. It does pre-build. I get my development build out, and I'm pretty happy for a while.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that answers the first question, like the basic question. Just go with Expo. And the second question I usually get, well, it's a second, but I sometimes get it. Can I use JavaScript in my project? I'm always like, technically you could probably, but why? It's like, just use TypeScript. It's when I got started with TypeScript, I had no idea what TypeScript actually was, and I had no problem like getting into it. You can still throw an any here and there if you don't understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
So I think people sometimes fear that it's getting really complicated. For example, you look on X, you see Matt, what's his name, Pocock, the TypeScript wizard. He has amazing courses and things on TypeScript. And whenever I see a code example from him, I'm like, I have never done anything close to that in my life. I think like these constructed enum union types, it's more of a library author thing where you like do these like really complicated. In my apps, I'm just happy when the function like returns a promise string or a promise boolean, and I can like safely access that stuff. It's no question to me at this point.
I will say personally, so I was probably the last bitter clinger to vanilla JavaScript on the Expo team, and even I've converted. And the default presets are like pretty permissive, as Simon mentioned. It's not gonna like scream at you if you put an any in there.
No,
it's not. It's gonna let you put in a JavaScript. If you have a stray old JavaScript file, you still need to import. And oh, I should remember. I had a little other JavaScript that escapes my head at the moment. But yeah, it's pretty easy to. Oh, I know what it is. And you'll touch on this later. Is like AI. If you have like a little complicated JavaScript or TypeScript thing that's giving you squigglies, a lot of the AI tools now can help you out of it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So those are the two core foundations. I think the third one is about routing, and this one it's kind of clear to me. I mean, you're from Expo as well. So if you start a new Expo app, by now you will get file-based routing with Expo Router. And I've been using this for quite some time. So this really feels like you're using Next.js or anything, or a SvelteKit, anything from the web. And I found this really good. Like once you get into the mindset of how you use a layout file, you can have platform-specific layout files, how all of these things come together. I think that Expo Router is the best choice for new applications. Also, looking at all the things Evan is doing, Evan Bacon is putting out right now, they're usually related to Expo Router. You can technically also use React Navigation. They just released version 7, I think, lately.
Yes, that's correct.
So the React Native setup with like where you define your screens, it will work just fine for you as well. But I just don't see a reason why you would like learn this right now. So if you're getting into React Native now, I would just go with Expo Router. If you know React Navigation from before and feel like you want to stick to it, you might get away with it for some time, but I feel like at some point everyone just has to get into Expo Router if they want to benefit from the things that Evan and your team is doing.
I think too, it helps with, like, at first it was like a little bit of a mind brand. Like I could just kind of like throw screens out and whatever file structure I wanted to in React Navigation. And Expo Router, by placing them in the file systems, maybe for a minute that feels like, oh, I have to think about where this goes, but that actually becomes a huge benefit when you talk about app structure. Like, it forces you to put the routes in logical places. And I really appreciate that once I go beyond like 5 or 6 screens.
Yeah. Me too. I can navigate around so quickly at this point. It just feels naturally to me. So my clear recommendation is use Expo Router in 2025. And this is the default app. Quick tip, by the way, if this is a bit too much for you in the beginning, this always looks cool. Like, you get all these cool things. Just do npm run reset project. That's included. It will get rid of all the fluff in here. And so this is my starting point usually, because then you have like a blank layout file with a stack and index. And this is like a lot easier to understand. Like, oh, I got my view and that's rendered here, and I got an index up here that's coming from the layout. So it's a bit easier to understand, I think, in the beginning.
Yeah. There's one real quick question out here we'll address here while we're in the Expo Router subject. And to answer this real quick, you do have to use this in an Expo project. So you do have to have the Expo package installed and use the Expo CLI, because really, so number one, when we talk about, like, say, React Navigation 7 versus Expo Router uses React Navigation 7 for the underlying stack and tab components. So you get access to all the same properties, but Expo Router is kind of built on an optimization where it's turning the files on your file system into React Navigation screens. So that's why you have to use the Expo CLI for it.
Cool. One addition I just noticed is this library caught my attention a couple of months ago. It's called React Native Bottom Tabs. And I wasn't aware that the default tab navigation is actually JavaScript based and not exactly the native behavior. So this library from Oscar from CallStack gives you this. I don't know. Can I play this here? Of course not. Why should I be able
to? I haven't tried that.
Yeah, it's anyway. It's kind of hard to see the difference. I mean, on Android, you get a nice tab bar. On iOS, you also get like a fade between the different pages. It's very subtle. Like,
yeah, it's got that like material ripple effect on Android, right? Yeah,
right. You really need a good eye. So I think probably people in reality won't notice, but it feels a bit better. So this might actually be I don't know what Evan's plans are. If he could, like, at some point make this an option or a default, but it's also not a big issue to integrate this with Expo Router. There are a couple of resources on this already.
I'm not sure if that would become like a default at any point, but like, I feel like there's a pretty inspired combination with some of the stuff released in the latest Expo SDK for Expo Router, where, like, I think my ideal combination, if I want the best tab experience everywhere, would be to use this native bottom tabs on native, and then use the headless tabs in the Expo Router UI library for webs. And you can actually do platform-specific files like layout.native.ts, layout.web.ts. So then you can have true native tabs on native, but then you can restyle them and really just completely rearrange them. It's almost like CSS reset for tabs, the headless router, headless tabs, I like to call it. So, which is perfect for web.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I need to do this as well. I haven't used the headless tabs a lot yet. They're a bit underrepresented, I guess. Yet, gonna have to do a little demo with that. Okay, that I think wraps up the core section of the tools. Like, use Expo Router, use TypeScript, use the Expo workflow with pre-build. I think that's the foundation we can all agree on. Coming to the next category, we might see some different opinions. I'm curious what Keith's take is. So I wanted to talk about state management. I think we can make one distinction up front about state management. There's like server state, and then there's app state. And I think for everything related to server state, like, everyone in the React world is using 10-state query for like everything asynchronous. If you're using any kind of API promises, there's really nothing better to me. Have you found anything better? Or, I mean, everything 10stack is doing, also what 10stack Start is taking off, 10stack Router, it's like this is becoming a next competitor itself.
Yeah, so I was a recent convert to Tanstack Query, but I used a combination of Tanstack Query and Jotai for all of my demos this year, for React Navigation, or for Expo Router, sorry. Like, I feel like if you have an app that's very dependent on, the interactions between the server to the client, it's you go to a page and you're downloading some data and you're interacting with that data. Tanstack Query is really perfect, and it's perfect because it's got every one of those little options. So I used to build all the little things that are in Tanstack Query, like all the little state, loading, error, all those little states. I used to build those manually in Mobic State Tree. And then I realized, like, it probably was there for years because I was still like using Mobic State Tree a lot. Like, oh, I could have just had this all automatically and I could stop maintaining my own code here. And so, like, I think there's still a lot of, case for different, like, there's still apps I'll probably do with Mobic State Tree because I want to just have like really precise control over my state. Maybe they don't fit into that neat category of you load some data every time you go to a screen, that kind of thing. But like in terms of like being able to cache it, being able to be very responsive, automatically refreshing data as it changes on different screens, like I can't imagine using anything else for that, for interacting with an API.
Yeah. I feel the same. Like all these states is loading, is refetching, is error. It's so easy to use at this point, including the query keys. And I think here this is from one of the applications from Zero to Hero, where we build like a shopping app a little. I think I haven't included, but it comes with. Let me check. Yeah, there's a dev plugin. Maybe I can open this. Oh yeah, it actually works. I wasn't expecting this. So this is an Expo dev plugin where you can actually debug your queries. So if I go into something, you can see like the data here in the Query Explorer. You can see exactly what's cached. This is really helpful for working with 10stack Query. It's called, what's it called? I don't know. Something with dev plugin.
Oh, with dev tool plugins?
Yeah, it's a dev plug. Yeah, dev plugins / React Query.
Okay, is that one of the ones in our kind of umbrella package for those? Is that a third-party one?
I'm not sure. Maybe better.
Either way, it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks familiar. I'm having deja vu because I wrote the documentation for V1 of those plugins, and I feel like I played with it a long time ago.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So this is the recommendation. Now, app state. This is a challenging topic. So I was looking into different libraries. I was looking at the Rising Stars, where Jack Harrington gave a nice text about like the current state of state. And if you look at this, you're gonna see that Zustand is actually at the top of the list, like of the Rising Stars right now, far above the other ones coming here. So for me, Zustand has kind of not won, but it's the clear favorite of most people today. And I feel like it's actually a great solution. So in this app, it still resembles a bit like the Redux pattern. You have the store here, and you have some actions defined for your store. I don't know. You can nicely combine it with things like MMKV. So if you plug in a middleware, it will automatically persist your data using MMKV or also async storage, whatever you prefer. And I really like working with Zustand, how you integrate it into your pages and then use it. However, I think there's also a case for other libraries like Yotai, which is more atomic. I haven't used Yotai a lot yet. Only Jack explained the concept to me, and I was toying around a bit with Legend State because it has a nice like offline sync thing going on. So I think there are different cases where Zustand is great, where Yotai makes sense, and probably also where Legend State makes sense. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, probably.
Yeah, I was finding a lot of success with like, oh, if Tanstack Query is handling like 98% of data transfer and caching, and I just needed like one, like to say like save my session token, Yotai was like really nice because like, oh, here's this an atom. It's just session state. But like building out bigger structures, I felt like I had an easier time with Zustand.
Yeah, you from America can't pronounce it right, huh?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh god, I'm gonna butcher that.
Yeah. Yeah, Jack
Speak-
learned to pronounce it. Yeah, it's hard.
I'll get there someday. I have to use it more. That's the thing. Speaking of state libraries, like and I kind of mentioned one of like the bigger classic state libraries, but we got a question about Redux and Redux Toolkit. So what would be your kind of position on some of the like the bigger like the ones where you like I don't know if that's the right word because you can build small state in all of these, but like almost like macro state libraries that we've used in the past.
I mean, they're still used in a lot of applications and will probably be used for a long time because like all the legacy applications won't migrate magically to Zustand overnight. They're kind of like they have fallen out of fashion a bit. And I just got started usually with Zustand and I didn't look back. So for people still using like somebody just mentioned Redux Toolkit. I think we could have a super long discussion about all of these things. And if it works for you, then it works for you. I mean, ultimately, the problem of like too big solutions might just be that they slow down your app. But if you don't experience your app becoming slow because of your state and re-rendering, then it's okay. Then just keep it, I guess. Never change a winning team.
Yeah, what I think about a lot when I think about like starting up a new app is I think about like the boilerplate, the startup time, and I think like I'm still a big fan of Mobic State Tree, and I'm not going to take it out any of my existing apps. And I find it's a second like language for me. Like I almost know it better than English sometimes, as I can tell by my pronunciation. But so it's super easy for me to add things on. But if I already have like a client server kind of data pattern going that I know TanStack query does well, and I'm building a new app, I'm probably not going to put Mobic State Tree or Redux in there because I just need a little bit of state, and these micro state libraries can get you started. Really just like kind of defining the objects and a few functions and a one-liner for adding async storage, that kind of thing. So that's a really nice startup experience when paired, especially with TanStack query.
Which was the one that Infinite Red is using in their template? It's also Mobic,
yeah, Mobic State Tree.
Yeah, Jabin.
And I like the Ignite CLI template too. I feel like it's a great place to get started if you want like a boilerplate that just like
absolutely
smells like it's been used for production, smells like it's been used for money and like the best making money in the best way, because it's very practical, and it's a great way to get started. Well, and I've done workshops starting from the Ignite CLI template and had
nice
success with those.
Nice, that's cool. Okay, we can't find a clear winner for state management, I guess, and I think that's okay.
That's okay.
So let's continue with something where we'll also probably won't find a clear winner, which is talking about UI libraries and components. Where should we get started? Probably one of my favorites is definitely Native Wind. Why? Native Wind just brings Tailwind from the web to React Native. And Tailwind might not be the best thing the humanity ever invented, but it's so widely adopted across the web, and pretty much everyone knows Tailwind, that it just enables all these web developers to kind of seamlessly go into React Native. And I think I have one application, like one of my own applications. Let me check. Actually, I'm using this as I said in the beginning, I want to ship more applications this year. And my tech stack currently involves Native Wind as well. Like all the time, I start my app with Native Wind for a simple reason. AI knows all the Tailwind stuff. And so when I write a React Native app, AI can do like the whole styling. So everything you see on this page here, all of this is Native Wind. And by the way, this is the native bottom transition. So you might see like this little fading in of the screens. I don't know if this is visible on these screens. Like all of this is Native Wind, and you can move so unbelievable fast with it. I know people in the past used React Native Paper and other component libraries. And one thing I kept having an eye on as well is this React Native reusables, because the whole ShedCN on the web is super popular as well. Like if we had ShedCN for React Native, that might be amazing as well. But my starting point, I think, for everyone would be to use Native Wind. So I'm curious about because I know it's sometimes a spicy topic. People either like Tailwind or they really hate it. So where do
Yeah,
you stand?
I was probably one of the more resistant ones, and
I
it
figured
pretty
that
much
after you
converted.
said you enjoy JavaScript for
Like
so
I'm
long.
very much, yeah, I'm like, and I'm also very much like a mobile first developer. So like
Y-
when I first
Are you
saw
still on
Tailwind,
NPM?
what was that?
Are you still on NPM or are you using anything like Bun?
Oh, I actually started using Bun finally, actually, because NPM 22 kind of like crashes sometimes on Windows. So I finally switched over to Bun, but actually I was using NPM for a long time because I'm like, well, I want as few dependencies as possible, and I don't like non-defaults. And but like, so like React Native, like the standard styling, the standard style sheet was actually like really appealing to me because I was so bad at like real CSS. I was like, oh, dumbing it down for me was actually kind of nice. But Tailwind's pretty much converted me over. And I think like one of the key differentiators is like, number one, like it's a little bit of a slow learning curve. It's like one of those, like, I don't know what you call those in math, but like, where you kind of like start up slow and then you just like really ramp up. So you're like really struggling with it for a couple hours, and then you're just like, I can do anything. And I think like having the fact that it like built into it are like default breakpoints, like you can just start typing like, well, I want like margin 1, margin 2, and those have a default setting that you can later override based on your app, but you already are starting from a standpoint of like, here are some good standard spacings. So I feel like you can start to have something that looks like a pretty coherent, symmetrical, decent looking UI really quickly without having to go and define a bunch of little custom atoms in your app. So I really like that. And I'm really looking forward to, I didn't know about the reusables. And like, to me, that's the missing part of it, is having some kind of, some native Wind friendly components that you can start to, use standard things and not have to rebuild everything yourself. So I'm really excited to try that as well.
Yeah, this looks pretty nice as well. I think it's not really done yet, but it's pretty cool. I mean, there are still solutions, and I don't know. Are still people starting apps and use React Native Paper or something? I mean, they're still popular. They have so many downloads. I mean, the other solution that was super popular last year was Tamagui, which was created by Nate. So yeah, I have I have a mixed relation about Tamagui. I kind of liked it really a lot in the beginning, but then I also found it very challenging usually to get started. So the docs were not that great last year. Maybe they have improved by now. I don't know exactly. And I think you can create pretty wild things, but it's not just Tamagui is more. It's not just styles for your React Native application. It's this like whole concept of the optimized compiler and everything else. Then there's also the one framework Nate announced last year. So for my applications, I feel like it's a bit overkill in some places. That's why I used it less. I don't know. What's your current point on Tamagui?
I feel like my most sensible entry point into it is if like I want like a big like kind of like pre-built component library that has like, it's like the kitchen sink of different, nicely styled components. I don't quite understand a lot of like the compiler optimizations. And part of that is because like I'm often like I'm usually doing mobile first, so I'm like, oh, I don't care how big my JavaScript bundle is, just lay it in there. It's going to load once and the user will be fine. There are some really cool examples in the Tamagui library. Like there is a pager view, and it not only shows the pager view, but it's like inline in a demo, and it actually shows you how it does the animations where you have like it's going like, here's my image, here's another image, and like it shows each one on each side, and it actually demonstrates popping in the image on the side, so you can continuously animate these things without having them all loaded into like a scroll view or something like that. And like that isn't replicated in a lot of places, like demonstrating here's how you build that with a UI and a UI kit in a performant manner. So there's some specific cases where I could really see it being a big benefit. But it is like, to me, I feel like I have a little bit of easier time diving into Native Wind because it's like, here's just a bunch of little like styling bits and just start going to town.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone, I think it also shines most when you have really cross-platform apps. Like all these things work seamlessly on native and web. So this is where they usually are best. So if you only build a native app, you might not get the most benefit of using Tamagui.
I feel like that's table stakes too in styling libraries is like the universal compatibility. Even if you're not ready to target webs, like sometimes I just like to open the web browser and work on my native app. Sometimes I'm too lazy to go find my phone. So knowing it works everywhere in case you want to take it somewhere else.
Right.
And that's something both Tamagui and Native Wind are good at.
I just want to throw one more into the mix, which is Unistyles. I know Unistyles 3.0 is right around the corner, talking to Jacek. Unistyles was on my radar for quite some time. I think it's a super interesting approach. Like, is there any code example here? It's pretty much like a replacement for the Stylesheet API. So instead of importing like Stylesheet from React Native, you import it from Unistyles, and you kind of use it the same, but then it expands on like the whole functionality, like all the things you can then do, like media queries and variants and like pretty much everything which is missing in Stylesheet. I think it got kind of popular over the last time. Yeah, it's at 2K stars. So if you're up for something fancy this year, you can also try React Native Unistyles. It's definitely blazing fast because all the the C++ going on under the hood here will make this super cross-platform and super performant.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, new projects are always a good opportunity to try a new library, and I feel like trying all of these are capable, and if it's not what you're used to, it'll expand your mind a little bit. So
absolutely,
it might help you in the other libraries too, as you use those.
And it's a quite easy drop-in replacement. So let's wrap up the UI and styling category. I just want to bring in two things related to animations. I just want to have it mentioned. So there's no discussion. Your project needs React Native reanimated, and I think it's included in every default Expo application. This is your way to build any kind of performant animation, whether you're moving some boxes around the screen or have like a little jumping button, or you have a entering animation. You can like easily animate your lists. It's like 2 lines of code to make sure that when you have a flat list or something, items not just disappear, but that they're like have a linear transition. It's really, there's no discussion about reanimated. And I don't know what's going on, but they're going to have an announcement this week. They teased something on X.
Yeah, it looks horse related, but that's all I know.
I wasn't sure. It looked like something related to, I don't know, web GPU. I don't know. I got those feelings, but maybe it's also reanimated for, I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. I just saw it this morning and I was like, something's happening.
Something big. Yeah, something big. And for all of those who want to try something new, you can check out Moti from Fernando Rojo. I know some people used this and found this really easy to add like entering and presence animations to your applications. It's something different once again. It's probably not what everyone's using, but that's a cool thing about side projects and tinkering around with stuff that gives you the ability to just like play around for a couple of hours with this and see how it fits. And maybe you're going to notice that it actually works pretty great for your application and is super easy. So yeah, check out Moti. Also, if you know Fernando, you know he's like a genius.
Gosh, yeah.
And we're going to come back to another library he has done because, yeah, he just knows what he's doing, honestly.
There was one quick question about, we kind of already covered it, but just to circle back on media queries. I mean, all of these styling libraries that we brought up have some kind of built-in media query support to make your apps responsive. I don't know if you had anything to add there.
No, I think they should all. Whether you use Native Wind, whether you use Unistyled. It's only if you use Stylesheet, then you kind of rely on Flexbox styling, and yeah, and then you have to like use a web layout and a native layout to achieve this. So yeah, probably pick one of those. I would pick Native Wind.
Yeah, I love the breakpoints. Like I just put like SM : in front of it, and now it works on anything but bigger than 640
dark
pixel.
mode
It's
as
so
well.
easy. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. We're already 40 minutes into this. We have 2 categories left and a little outlook. Let's make this category a bit faster now because it's just about a couple of tools. So I wanted to mention a few tools that I use and recommend. So the first one is I've switched completely from VS Code to Cursor. You might like AI code or not, but this has saved me so much time over the last couple of months. And I know that Windsurf is now the alternative, and you can also use Copilot VS Code. But also, after speaking to Ben Awad, if you trust his opinion, he's also using Cursor. It's not just me. Most people honestly do these days. It's amazing. Have you tried it, or on which editor are you?
Only a little bit. I've mostly done GitHub Copilot. I kind of start with like, oh, okay, I'm comfortable with it giving me fixing my TypeScript error. Now I'm comfortable with giving me a line of code. Now I'm comfortable with one file, and I keep going to the point where I'm like, I wish this was just a little bit more integrated. So I'm looking forward to trying Cursor next, because it seems like it's the culmination of that, where it's actually like aware of all the different files and just much more contextual being built in the editor than a lot of these things can do. I feel like I have to feed the other AIs a lot of prerequisite information each time to get the same result.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, great use case. I opened VS Code with the demos. I should have opened some of them in Cursor. Let me see. Oh yeah, I got one in Cursor. We should be able to bring that up. Let me see. Do you have this open here? So for me, this works really fast. Where are we here? We're on the home page. So whenever I want to do something, I'm usually really just generating that stuff. You go here, you do something like create a view with cool information. I don't know. I have no idea what I want to generate, but it really works seamlessly, and it adopts, like you see, it spits out something. I accept it. I hit save, and then I got this view.
Very nice.
You see all this code generated in a couple of seconds, and then I could tweak it. And you see, I gave it a prompt like generate something cool. That was totally that was nothing, and it still came up. That's
pretty subjective, but it's still good.
Yeah. I honestly, when it stops working, I can't live without it. With Cursor here, they say it as well, like tap, and I'm doing this the whole day long, because they switch, like go up, they add the import, tap, you just tap through, and when it stops working, you're like, where are my imports? How does this coding thing work? I can't live without this anymore. It's crazy. I just recommend it highly to everyone.
I forget which video it was, but I really appreciated one of your relatively recent videos where you focused on building like the requirements document and then feeding it into the AI.
Yeah, that was, I think, with bold.new or something as well. There's also like the cursor rules. So, and usually put a cursor rules file here. I think somebody on X mentioned this, that there should be an Expo cursor rules file. And there are a couple of, they're not super great. Yeah, I already sent this to Dan. So I think Brent or Dan, somebody's already working on that. Okay, cool. I wanted to make this quick. So use Cursor or give it a try. For testing, I highly recommend you check out React Native testing. There's a great guide here. I think there's actually a cookbook in this library, or at least in this repository, you can find a lot of examples. Because whenever I need to get back into testing, I'm like, oh, how did this work? And there's so many examples here, like mocking fetch calls or something. Like all these practical things are included. This is for your app testing with React Native testing library. If you come from a different point of view for UI testing, and I know Evan also just mentioned this, Maestro is what usually most people recommend these days for UI testing. It's really intuitive to set up your UI test. You kind of just write them out. Let's close this. Have you tried this? Have you written some tests with Maestro?
A little bit. I've mostly focused on kind of demonstrating the EAS build workflow with it. So I've kind of gone end to end with that, which is really nice. Like it's definitely like way lower dependencies or than any of these previous testing frameworks. It pretty much, always works with the latest version of React Native. It's very easy to integrate. It reminds me of like as testing frameworks for web got more focused, like thinking of Cypress, and I think there's another newer one now. Like I feel like we're finally getting that for React Native, where they're really focused on React Native and they do a really good job there with low boilerplate and low setup.
I agree. Yeah, it's really that easy. Just looking at that video, everyone will probably see the benefit. And to the tools category, I also wanted to add Sentry, because I recently worked a lot with Sentry, and it really helped me to find a lot of issues in my projects that I didn't caught because, I don't know, my environment was different or whatnot. So for anything error-related monitoring, also performance monitoring, and now replays, I recommend to check out Sentry. It works flawless with Expo. It even worked with Expo Go, I think, if you get started.
Not anymore. It actually, a few years ago now. So I would recommend, actually, you could use it just to send JavaScript errors, but to get the native integration, you would have to go through the development build.
Yeah, and of course, use Expo. I use it all the time for my applications. I'm currently, and that's the interesting thing. So as much as I talk about Expo, I'm on a free plan because I don't have a lot of money. I'm a developer. I'm sole developer, but I still get a lot of value out of Expo even for free. I might be in a low priority queue every now and then, but usually that's not a problem for me. It's still so cool to just run EAS build -- auto submit. And it's like overnight, it builds my app, it puts it into App Store Connect or Google Play Store. And the next morning I go to my Mac, I just hit OK, add for review, and I'm done. It just feels great. And I know that pretty much
I'm a fan.
I mean, every company I talk to that's serious about React Native development is using Expo because, it just makes your life a lot easier. And we haven't even talked about EAS updates or now the new EAS hosting, right?
And there's workflows now. So as you're mentioning CI/CD, I was thinking of soon in workflow. So we keep expanding these different jobs, which are these atoms that you can kind of put together in a workflow. And I think a lot of folks will glom onto as their first workflow using EAS update with EAS environment variables. So it gives you the ability, because you're running EAS update kind of the same way you would have run EAS build, that you can share your environments in the cloud and just have that true consistency, whether you're building or updating, making I can see people plugging that even into their existing GitHub actions.
I must discover the workflows a bit more. I mean, my workflows are not that complicated, but I can definitely see where they come in. Oh, Yusuf also joined the stream. I know that Yusuf also has a nice template. I think Yusuf also, by the way, released a new library lately, which is like an OTP password input thing. I saw him in the chat.
I remember seeing that. That was really cool looking.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Let's give a quick shout out. Here, input OTP native. I already started that one. Pretty cool components.
It looks so good.
Yeah, I always hate to build
just
my
the way
OTP
you want to look
screen.
at it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's that easy. I mean, great job, Yusuf. I had another full library, another category of must-have packages. I think we're gonna skip over them. You can in about 1 hour, my video is released, and you can see those packages in there. I would rather love to talk with Keith a bit more about the future, and we can base that on one thing that Evan recently released. I already opened it up here. Oh no, is it this one? No, it's not this one. This one. So this code is available for everyone on GitHub. It's the Expo RSC movies demo. And Evan built a demo in which he used React Server components in a fantastic way, because everyone's asking, how do I use them? Where do they really shine? And he just came out of nothing with this complete example. So this is using the movie database. You just got to plug in your API key in the environment file, and then you get this view where you got loading states. You're loading all of this from the API. Of course, it's not working. When I show something, it's working. I don't know. He must have spent a lot of time. And I know that creating these kind of applications is also fun. But there's so much to discover in here, how he's using useServer, the useServer directive, in combination with RSC and with client code, and how everything comes together. So for everyone who's interested in diving into these latest features, I highly recommend checking this out and really not just giving it a quick glance, but really looking from top to bottom through the stuff. And I need to dive into this a bit more because there's so much going on in here. And the greatest thing, it's completely for free. He put this out, you can just use it. You can play around with it, and then you can copy some of the stuff into your own environment and play with this. So that, I think, brings us to like what's going on in 2025 in React Native. We had some core technologies which we agreed on. Some like there are different solutions. And now we got all these cool other things that are to some degree finished and to some degree still upcoming. So RSC is, to me, one of the coolest things in 2025. Then we, of course, have DOM components on the list. I don't know. Has Evan used DOM components in here?
I'm not sure in this one. We do have some other demos out there with DOM components.
Right.
DOM components. I kept thinking about it. Last week I was at a conference that was very much not a React Native conference. Like everybody I ran into was a .NET and Angular developer. But everybody's ears perked up with DOM components because you get talking about like, I feel like regardless of if you're in JavaScript, even if you're not using React Native is probably still your best bet for expanding into mobile. I think it still is the best leveraging of other skills. So I was kept thinking about like, oh, these folks have like these legacy web apps. And even though they're not in React, there's like Angular to React interop layers. There's interop layers to React from all sorts of UI frameworks. So this is like a great opportunity to reuse a lot of code and gradually, then you can gradually migrate things over to React Native. But I feel like I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of people jumpstart new apps based on things they already have with DOM components in 2025.
Me too. I think I don't have too much HTML that I can break into. I'm more like create all this thing new.
Yeah.
But for everyone else, this is just fantastic. I talked about this last year as well. I tried a couple of these things, like how you can gradually make your web view more native, bringing in the props. It just works. It just works.
And even if you're building a new app, one of the kind of keystone examples is bringing in components that are like probably pretty hard to rebuild from scratch in native. So like a rich text editor, or if you're using a custom mapping platform that's, has a web, framework, but doesn't have a mobile version, you can bring that right into your app.
I think Beto had an example about using like a rich text editor, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So DOM components, big on my list. And we also haven't talked about EAS hosting, which was released, I think, was last week, right? Or was it 2 weeks
Yes,
ago?
that was last week. Yeah. Tuesday.
Yeah. So EAS hosting, for everyone who hasn't seen it yet, makes it incredibly easy to just export your web code and then host it. Could I do this with Evan's demo? I don't know. I kind of don't want to do it. What's it like? NPX Expo. What's it? Export?
Oh yeah, NPX Expo export -- web.
And then EAS deploy, right?
Yeah.
So let's do a live demo of this. let's see if this works. I have no idea. I haven't tried this. I expect to run into some problems, to be honest. But that's okay. This is, as I said, a quite extensive example of using RSC. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have a lot more to talk about RSC in the coming next 5 or 6 months. The EAS hosting is the foundation to make a good place to host client server React Native apps. Build complex data driven UIs that work in native and mobile, or native and web.
I'm so sorry that I've now taken the livestream.expo.app domain. But let's see. Okay, yeah, no such module index. Okay, there was probably some rewrite error. I don't know how to fix that. Evan could probably tell us.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll work soon. It's a pretty big focus of us.
It's still pretty cool that I generated this web export and EAS deploy. This part, it kind of worked. Like, it's a problem of my app. It's not a problem of EAS deploy. So it's really like one command that give me the preview and also the project with like all the error analytics and everything else. I really enjoyed using that and trying out the first things. I think this kind of wraps it, because this is now the future, and I feel like we've been talking about universal apps for years now, and maybe with RSC support, with native Wind working in Expo and React Native projects, with EAS hosting, like the whole dream of universal apps to me is actually quite near, or at least it never felt like we were closer to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as I mentioned, I do a lot of my mobile first development in the web browser because I'm that confident that it'll be pretty much the same. Like I might be fixing some spacing here or there, or tweaking animation, but it's very good, and I'm really looking forward to deploying a lot of things with EAS hosting.
I wonder if we can open this preview at least in the browser. Still want to like get the most out of Evan's demo. Yeah, it works in the browser as well. And I think you had one more note that you left in my docs, which I found quite interesting, which was about like we see all this universal stuff going on and like be on every platform. But at the same time, we also have libraries like Zigo, which allow us to like bring in a native iOS context menu, or we got, what was the other one?
Expo Apple targets. So
right.
So like being able to bring in not just like widgets, iOS widgets, but like any app extension. So you're talking about notification extensions, watchOS apps, live activities. There was Expo Apple targets has been pretty much around for a year, and it's a config plugin that lets you bring those in without having to modify your native project. But over the holiday end of year break, Evan released NPX Create Target, which actually does the setup for you. So it's a very seamless way to just, okay, now I have an iOS widget, which are things that are typically were very hard to integrate. Like because they are a very deep native integration. I actually did a workshop where we kind of like retraced the steps of Expo Apple targets, like how it implemented. And like you go really deep into how an Xcode proj file works. Like it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, you got to work with Swift at some point, which is always a bit scary for people coming from the web development. But simply the fact that it's that easy, that it's like NPX create target, and then you can do it quite easily. Right. It's fascinating to be. Still, this video is playing. It takes some time, yeah.
That you can just write the Swift for the widget itself and not have to deal with all the other things that go into setting that up and building it. And yeah, that's been like all last year. Like we kind of saw things about like, hey, being a good platform citizen and embracing the intricacies of mobile, the very native menus. Like we saw the tab bar, the native tabs, basically looking like you're a native app if you're native. And React Native apps are already native. They're using real native components, but there's an extra distance you can go that really makes it look absolutely indistinguishable from someone who's dragging and dropping whatever component that's new from Apple, into Storyboard or whatever.
Yeah, I still need to play around with this a bit more. I was actually not scared, but I wasn't sure if I could play. Whenever I try something new, I need to get like really deep down into it. And I feel like if I start with this, it will take me at least a couple of days to explore what's possible and how all of that works. But it's maybe going to be worth it because I really want to do a widget. How cool is that to create your own widgets with React Native?
Oh, yeah. And actually, React Native Android widget was already pretty well established. And actually, that one lets you write a limited form of JSX to write Android widgets. So between those two libraries, like the reason why they're two different libraries is because building a widget in iOS and Android is completely different.
Yeah.
But between those two libraries, you have config plugins where you can do this with the minimum amount of necessary native code, and you can full two-way data transfer. Actually, that was a big thing, not a big thing, but a little note in the release notes for Expo file system is it added some extra stuff that makes it easy to transfer data between widgets and your main application on iOS, which Apple makes probably unnecessarily hard by technically making them different apps with different bundle IDs.
Yeah.
But that difficulty has been, addressed with Expo file system.
Yeah, Evan told me a bit about what's going on in the background, like how you get data into them, and it's like kind of ugly how like they share the data. It's strange that there's no better way to do this, but
right, yeah. Speaking of native, looking native, I was curious for your thoughts, or the audience was curious for your thoughts on keyboard avoidance. What are your recommendations there?
Oh, keyboard avoidance. That's a good topic. I'm a bit old school.
Full
I
video.
try to get away. I try to get away with like the keyboard avoiding view. I know that's definitely not the best way to handle it. I know that Herebot has an extensive thought on it, and Beto also shared a video about the keyboard avoidance. I'm just looking at this. It's actually from himself. Oh, it's on the Expo account. I don't know actually what's the best package. Would you still recommend the keyboard avoiding view, or is there like what's your choice?
I think if you have like like one or two text inputs on the screen, like you can still actually do like a pretty good like chat POC with keyboard avoiding view. React Native keyboard controller seems to be the emerging favorite, and especially like once you have like a scrolling list of like 3 or 4, just a bunch of text inputs that go down the page, like a lot of form building type stuff. I would go straight for that because you're going to run into all those weird edge cases. Like, okay, it'll work. It'll avoid it when you like tap on a text input and then go away from a text input and come back to another one. But then what about when you like tab over to one or, go from one to the other, then suddenly you start. My original code I wrote before these things existed to address scenarios like that, it was the ugliest thing you've ever seen. And I spent hundreds of hours maintaining it. And it looks like React Native keyboard controller addresses that. And it's also too, I think, going to be more tolerant towards, there's like a lot of changes in the ecosystem. React Native edge-to-edge, Zuntech's new library enables the edge-to-edge, which I guess will be a default for Android going forward. Basically makes Android apps behave in terms of their like status bar and bottom nav bar behave more like iOS, and that actually changes keyboard handling. So scenarios where you did or didn't use keyboard avoiding view in the past may work differently on Android once you implement that. And so I think something like React Native keyboard controller will probably be more tolerant of that.
Yeah, that's good to know. Next time I need it, I will definitely go for that right away. And I think I also noticed that somebody asked about iPad sizes, right, for tablets.
Yes.
That's interesting because one of my latest apps, I tried to make it responsive. So it's built actually for iPhone and iPad. And I just use Native Wind, really, and the breakpoints from Native Wind to make it work. So you can definitely do it. You actually, I think, have to disable building for iPad when you want to like only ship for iPhone. Otherwise, on the iOS App Store Connect portal, they will ask you for iPad screenshots, and you're like, I just wanted to build my iPhone app. I don't want to do iPad, so you have to like manually set something in your app config to disable it if you want to. And yeah, it works nice. But again, if I was just using React Native Style Sheet API, I'm not sure if I could like have done it that way. It becomes a lot harder if you just rely on Style Sheet if you want to build an app that looks good on phone and tablet.
Yeah, I find when I've tried to do that, I end up basically writing like my own like use media query hook where I like query the window dimensions. I basically do the thing that Native Wind would do for you automatically. And yeah, as you mentioned, like when you're doing iPad, make sure you're going to commit to it. Like if you're just going to blow up your phone app, because once you hit true, it supports tablet equals true, and you submit it to the store, Apple will always make you do iPad. So if you want to back out of it later, you actually have to like make a different app.
Yeah.
And what's also kind of cool with that too is like you can do the responsive stuff for everything in your screen, but you'll notice there's mobile, there's iPad, and then there's web, and web kind of iPad straddles between the two because you would like want to use your larger responsive sizes that you would use on web most likely, but you might want to still use your React native bottom tabs that you would use on mobile because the way tabs are typically presented on an iPad are different than on web. So yeah, once you get in that third variation, you're doing a lot of mixing and matching. You're probably going to have a lot of platform-specific directives, and it's worth it, especially if you make a really good iPad app. But definitely stuff to think about.
Yeah, it's quite challenging. I also use the native bottom tabs library, and suddenly on iPad I had like my tabs at the top in like a little overlay, and it looks like this is an iOS 18 something new, and I didn't expect my tabs to suddenly show up there, and so like my margin at the bottom was off. It's interesting to build for phone and tablet sizes.
Yeah.
Cool. I think Oh, we're already over time. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
That was fun.
we'll to bring it home. That was a lot of fun though.
How many people did tune in? I haven't checked.
Yeah, I mean, I see a little number that's got like it's 1681 and going up. So we had a lot of people in there, a lot of good chatter. Apologies, we couldn't. It's like there's a billion good comments. I know Beto is answering a lot of questions in there, and we've been able to get some questions up here today. But really good discussion. I mean, especially like we've been talking about just like the whole gamut, which is hard to address just in an hour or a day or even several days. Which is why folks should check out later on. You've got your kind of full video going really deeper into your React Native tech stack in 2025 on the Galaxy.dev YouTube channel. So definitely recommend folks checking that out.
Should be live in about 1 hour from now. If you're watching this live, if you watch this later, it will definitely be available.
Cool. Everybody, grab a snack, grab a coffee, come back to your computer, and dive into tech stack more. This will pay dividends as you go throughout the year because you'll know, I got to use all these tools. Or I mean, you don't have to use them, but there's a lot of good ideas in there for sure.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Simon, for joining us. Anything else you want to plug before we head out here?
Yeah, check out Galaxies.dev, check out the mission. And if you like content like this, also check out our podcast at podcast.galaxies.dev. Latest guest on the podcast was Ben Awad. Next episode will be with Evan Bacon, and after that, Jack Harrington. So got quite some interesting people on there.
That's a good lineup.
People really enjoyed these conversations. I enjoy them too. So yeah, if you want to learn more and stay up to date with React Native, check out the podcast or build your first app and ship it with our mission on Galaxies.dev. And I would love to come back. It was fun having a live stream.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have you back.
Like the technical stuff.
We could talk about this for days. Cool. Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Join us on the next Expo live stream. I'm actually not sure when that next one is, but look on the channel. It's right there. I can assure you.
I think it's next week with Evan or something.
It is next week, isn't it? Okay, so there is one next week. It is about
Apple targets. It should be about
Apple targets. Oh my gosh, it's so relevant. Yeah, Apple targets. So like we were talking about the widgets here, how to do things like that in your React Native app. Come back for more. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Simon, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.